Hello, my name's Tim Curtis from Intensive Engagement. Welcome to another short video just exploring the different steps of intensive engagement process. So the question being answered today here is, why do we need the justification step? This is the first step in the intensive engagement process. And to understand that, I'm going to look at the performer that we use in the training process. So the proforma is a document that collects all the information that you gather throughout the whole of the process. Now, to justify doing intensive engagement, frankly speaking, doing social innovation or engaging with communities is a long, very difficult and intensive process. We do lots of different types of community engagement, and we can do it thinly, we can do lots of different fun activities, but to do it well and to do it thoroughly requires a significant amount of investment and resource and time and effort. So we can't do this everywhere, it's just too expensive. So we want to choose very carefully where this sort of work should happen and what contexts. So in our practice so far, we have identified 3 criteria that helps us to choose the right places. First is, as we see here on the slide, is that we want to identify areas that are vulnerable. In policing terms, we could look at the Vulnerable Localities Index, for example, which is a map, a package of indicators to help us to understand whether a particular location is especially vulnerable to crime and antisocial behaviour. In wider work, this might be indices of multiple deprivation or other factors that suggest that a particular neighbourhood is suffering more than another area. So we're interested in where there is low social capital and where there are situations where people have been living in poverty or in a high crime area for quite some time. And that brings us to point 2, is that in policing terms and public safety terms, we're actually interested in areas that have been subject to long-term crime and harm problems. We can look at police statistics, and really we need to be thinking about 3 or more long-year statistics, 3-year statistics, rather than a couple of months or a few weeks. So areas that have been subject to high levels of crime, more than one would expect in a similar area. So not just because it's high crime, that can just be a nighttime economy area, but districts where there is more crime than one might expect. And we can take into account the harm indices. There are increasing numbers of pieces of research and guidance on how we might flag up certain types of crime as being more harmful and therefore more worthy of consideration. And then the third test is to think about the complexity of the problem itself. So large numbers of road traffic accidents might not be terribly complicated. That might be something that's relatively straightforwardly fixed, just requires funding. But where there is a situation where you as the decision maker are not clear about what's causing the problems, there might be lots of different types of stakeholders, different parties involved in the problem. The victims or the perpetrators might be sufficiently complex to warrant using intensive engagement in this location. So to sum up, intensive engagement is an intensive process. That's why we called it intensive engagement, and it costs money and time and resource. And in order for us to target that carefully, we need to make a fairly strong justification why we should do intensive engagement in this particular location rather than any other.